Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Yi. I hope everyone's doing well. This is a tutorial on the assignment for this week, the first part, which is to draw. It's a positive / negative space drawing. And excuse me. Your goal is to draw this chair as accurately as possible, like you see in the image. I want you to copy the proportion, the height and the width of the chair, and the light and dark areas. So the light areas will be your paper, the white of the paper. The dark area will be your shading in the dark area as evenly as possible. So you don't want a whole lot of texture within the darker area. One suggestion is when you're using the pencil, I would suggest a minimum of a 2B pencil, or maybe a 4B pencil if you have it. They tend to be a little bit darker. But I want you to shade in the negative space evenly by turning the paper, and, so that you don't have areas of lighter area or darker areas. You want to minimize that. You want more of an even tone, because it's not about different values of light and dark, different, So the goal here is to capture darker shapes and lighter shapes, and to see how they interact with each other in terms of drawing objects and shapes and forms. And in this tutorial, I'm going to show you some different ways to draw this chair. Like, what's the process? What's the step-by-step way of drawing a chair like this? Which I don't think this chair is super easy. I think it's challenging because of the shape of the curves and the basic proportions. Okay, so I'm going to start off with my iPad with my pen. And I'm going to start off with, let's see, a line, but I want to start off with a very light line. So I'm going to lower the opacity. And the light or darkness of the line corresponds with how hard you press with your pencil. So I want you to use actual pencil and paper, sketchbook, to complete this assignment. Now, what's the first step? So first step is to just stare at the drawing of your subject, the chair. And I want you to notice, where's the middle of the chair? Okay, it's resting on a table of sorts or a floor that's lit. Okay, so the chair itself is all white of the paper, has some shapes within. What's the major shapes that you see? Notice the curvature of the back of the chair. Almost has like a somewhat of a heart shape or an upside down nose at the top, and is narrower as it meets the seat of the chair. How many legs do you see of the chair? I see 3. Pretty much evenly spaced out between the left, the middle, and the right leg of the chair. And then you have the base, which kind of makes it a little bit tougher. You have that geometric white area. So step number 1 is we're going to figure out where to place the chair on the paper. Okay, so step 1, I want to see what's the very center of this composition. And you need to look at the photo reference from the example I put in there that I want you to follow. And I see the middle as the seat itself. Okay, so how do you establish the middle of your picture area, your sketchbook? Okay, so one way is to, I'm going to draw a light X. And this helps to establish kind of the center of this paper. And there's our center in the middle. Okay, now the chair I'm going to represent as just a line going across, maybe a thin rectangle. And it's a little bit to the right of this line. So if I start off with a line here, there's our chair seat. And I'm going to put a little bit more to the right side because I think it's a little bit offset to the right. And then I'm going to draw a rectangle, thin rectangle representing the chair seat. okay? And I'm kind of looking at the distance between that chair and the edge of the paper. And I like that it's in the middle because I think it corresponds correctly to the placement of the chair seat towards the center. And then from that X, that middle dot area, you can draw just a light line. And this kind of establishes the vertical center. So this is going to help us when we actually draw the backrest in relationship. So if you drew, kind of imagine a line right down the middle of your piece here, that'll help us to establish where does that intersect or meet the back rest, chair rest. Because the chair rest is a little bit to the left versus the right. It's not in the middle. Okay, and so we established the chair seat, and we're going to start off with just light lines and shapes. Next, I'm going to figure out what's the width of this seat rest to the height of the back of the chair. So if you take your fingers and just kind of use them as kind of like a pinch and measure, take your thumb and put it to the left side of the chair seat, and then your forefinger to the right. And then just turn it sideways and see what's the height and width relationship of the chair back to the chair seat. So, so the chair back is taller. It's taller than, so I'm going to sketch out the proportion, the width to the height ratio. And I think I made a little bit too tall, so I'm going to erase the there we go. Go back to our pen. Make sure it's still fairly light. Okay, so now we have the back, and I just represent it with a geometric shape. Okay, basic shapes first. And then our next step is to work on our legs of our chair. What is the length of the leg in relationship to the back? So it's almost the size of the height of the back of the chair. So we have 3 legs that I can see, and they're at an angle. So I'm going to just draw a line from the corner of that chair seat, approximately the size of the height of the back of the chair. And that's a good starting point. So I like the angle. It's not 45 degrees. It's maybe like 70 degrees. And I'm going to draw a thin rectangle just to establish the thickness, basic thickness of the leg. The next leg is I'm going to draw in the middle, just sketch out the next leg. And I'm looking at, it's towards the middle, and then finally at the right side, I'm going to draw that leg extending down. And it's a little bit wider at the base, a little bit narrow at top. I don't really care about all the fine, tiny details. I'm going for just the basic position of the 3 legs. And if you notice, between this area and this area, it's fairly similar, okay? I'm going to go back, and I think this middle leg needs to be towards the right a little bit more. There you go. That's better. Okay, so if you look at the space between the legs now, I'm satisfied with the basic proportion and the angle of the legs. And then we're going to go back up. And then, oh, I'm sorry, before we go back up, let's establish the angle of that geometric white area. I would ignore the shadow that's on that floor or that table. And what I'm going to try to draw is the angle of the left side of that shape that it's on. So where's the corner? So I'm going to pinpoint the corner where I want that. This little dot represents the corner right here of that base. And that corner comes down to this point, and I'm going to draw a line connecting those two. And I'm trying to mimic the angle of the left side, that angle that we see there. And I'm happy with that. And then for the other side, if you want, you can extend your pencil or pen and create the same angle that you see on the picture of your screen, and just bring that same angle down to your paper. There we go. So I'm happy with that angle. So you notice it's very sketchy at this point. Okay, I got the angles of the table, I got the legs, and then what's the next step? So we're going to go back and work on the back chair railing. So it's curved. And you notice that there's a little bit more space on the chair on the right side, okay? So it's kind of at an angle, it's not dead center. So you want to make sure you have this space here, this angle, this area available. Okay, now we're going to start off, what is the basic outside shape of that railing of the backrest? So if I start on the left side, I'm just going to follow up along what we started. And I want to go a little bit wider on the outside. By having that basic shape of the chair already established, I can use that and then to see where in the middle that it dips. Gives us a good guide in terms of basic proportion. Let me try that again. So it goes up, turns in a little bit, flares out, the ears, the wings here. Then it goes back into the middle. And then on the other side. There we go. So you're studying, you're slowing down, you're trying to describe the outside shape and form. And then, okay, before we go to the next shape that's inside of this, I want to look at this and start at the base again. And I want to draw in the contour or the thickness of that outside rail. So I want to go back in and draw. Give it some shape. It's no longer just a line by itself, it's just a shape. Okay, so now the next shape within this is we want to draw that light bulb shape in the middle. So we're gonna go around and notice the light bulb shape is wider at the top and it narrows at the bottom. And I'm really happy with this so far because it's, now we're going to do the same thing with that line. We're going to double it up and give it some thickness. This will end up being the light area, give us like some guidelines to shade this in light or dark. And we're just going to go around and slowly give it another line that echoes, mimics, just a little bit smaller, that first line that we created. So there we go. We got the railing in the back, we got the legs, and so far so good. Okay. Now for the tiny little, the railing on the bottom, that's a little bit tougher. What I'm going to do is, I think at this point, I'm going to show you with this digital drawing tool how to shade this in. We're not going to do all the little tiny details yet. So I'm going to make this much more opaque and darker. Okay, so now, much darker. Now I'm going to make the tip size a little bit larger. Good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to block in the values, just the basic shapes of this. And I don't want to get too close to the lines that I created. I'm going to do some more detailed work once we can zoom in a little bit. But I just want to get kind of close so I just can block in the basic lights and darks. And you can do this with your pencil. You can do this with your pencil to block in the lights and the darks. I just want to establish where the chair is at so it's easier to see. So you can shade this in by laying down a foundation of graphite, and use a 2B or a 4B pencil, it's easier. An H pencil is really hard to get good dark coverage. It's always going to remain kind of light gray. And if you want to leave like a little bit of space between the edges of your paper, like a margin, like a half an inch, that's fine. So you can tell already how the shape of the chair is coming out. And again, I'm leaving a little bit of space so I can do more detail later on. Let's see. If you've never done this before, it takes time to trust the system and practice. And I think it's very beneficial because it really helps with your sense of, like proportion. And you can draw other things in this manner also. You can, once you get handy with this, you can draw people, still life objects. Start off with large shapes first, and then you get down into smaller areas. So I'm blocking in large areas, and it still looks kind of rough, okay? So it's not super. I notice on screen here, it's not like completely black, so I'm gonna see if I can make that a little bit darker. That's better. And you wanna do this, no color, you just wanna use and have patience. I think that's important. Slow down a little bit and give yourself time to not rush through it. I think that's what you're aiming for, to improve upon your drawing skills and succeed at this exercise. So all these exercises that you're doing, they're slowly building up to your skill level so that you can tackle more difficult projects later on and help to visualize your imagination or what you're trying to communicate with your visual graphic, your design, your shapes and forms. Some people really like drawing with shapes versus just lines. That's how they see the world. They don't see the world as just purely shapes and purely as lines, I'm sorry. Okay, so we roughed that in. And now we're going to zoom in a little bit. Let's go in here and do some detail work. So now I'm going to make the brush a little bit smaller. And this is going to help us slow down and go back in and do some detail work. So you see on the chair railing, there's that kind of curve right there. We've created our own coloring book. So I'm looking at the original. I'm trying to observe the curvature and the shapes and forms. And I'm going to start off with I'm just going to move on to the next one. I'm being aware of your positive, negative shapes. And I'm looking at the edge, trying to make sure that it's not just made up or generalized. I'm trying to be faithful to the original shape and contour. And of course, we're not like robots, so we're not machines. So there's going to be some slight variation. No one's drawing is going to be exactly the same as someone else's. A little bit of your personality is going to come through in your drawing, and that's okay. So I'm trying to be sensitive as an artist to the shape and form. And the more you practice this, the better you become. Just like anything, the more you practice and get better at it, you're more familiar. And then I'm going to this area in between the negative space of the two chair railing, the back, the shapes. And I'm looking at the shapes, and this kind of looks like a goose shape or a bird of some sort. And I'm trying to match the thick and thin of this unique shape. And what's nice about going in closer with the just focusing on one area, it's less stressful than trying to, oh gosh, do the whole thing perfectly the first go around. So you're molding and shaping your drawing. And if you make a mistake, you have an eraser, you can go fix it a little bit later. Let's do some work on the other side. You got a little bump at the end. And it's looking a little bit nicer slowly. I'm just carving away at the side and a little more elegant and a little bit more accurate towards compared to the original picture. And I want to be aware of the thick and thin, the dips of the railing. Oops, that's, let's try that again. So. There we go. So smooth out the rough edges and try to be aware of the position of the angles of the line. Go back in and do the other side. So slowly you're seeing we're carving in and refining. So when you compare this to the original, slowly getting a little bit better. Now you notice something, we are missing some of the curved elements on the inside, in between, and the reason for that was I wanted to kind of do a kind of reverse process, which is I'm going to not add it in at this point, but I'm going to take it out again by erasing some of the shadow areas. It's more of a reductive process. You're removing elements rather than adding them, which can be sometimes a little bit easier. So I'll demonstrate in just a few minutes. I just want to get, again, just the basic shapes and forms, more accurate to the original. Take your time. Oops. Okay, we're getting there. So I want to make sure that this space in between the chair, this was a tough area right here. So let me get that. Let's zoom out here and take a look at it from a distance. So sometimes as artists, what you want to do is you want to set your drawing or your painting or your artwork off on a wall, lean it against something, and then look at it from a distance. It really helps to see how the parts are relating to each other and get some more perspective about the overall progress. So when we zoom out, it's getting there. Wow, it's I think the curvature on the top there is a little bit too much. So it flares out a little bit too much. So I'll try to fix that a little bit later. Okay, let me go back in here and show you with a pen. I'm sorry, the light dark of this area. So we want this to be completely white. And then, there we go. So let's make the pen a little bit thicker here. So in here, let's bring in the railing. And how does that railing look? So we're going to do one. It goes up, touches the middle, and then comes down. Okay, and then we have another one there, and that one is like a double, goes up and then down and connects. So you have these two negative lines, shapes, that help to define the that was a tough part right there. I think that space is not easy. So let's do the other side. I see this one's a little bit easier because it's like a curved shape. It touches the middle. So it starts on the middle leg. Where does it start? A little bit higher up and then goes up, like arch, and it comes down. And you see part of the remnants of that on the right side. There we go. The more time you spend with this, I think you can get a decent drawing in about an hour. Let's go back in here and do this area. So this one, there's a little curved brace on this corner. There we go. What we don't have is we need to go back in and make, there's a little triangle of negative space right there. You need the darker areas for the light to be seen. You need the lighter areas for the dark to be seen. Without each other contrast, you will not be able to see anything. It'd be all the same. So you need, the eye needs contrast to be able to discern and make the shapes out. So I'm going to do work. Now I'm not happy with the top here. I want to go back in and flatten this area out just a little bit more because we do have that little lip kind of just smoothly transitions down. Proportion is one of the harder things as an artist. You know, it takes a while to master and get used to. Let's zoom out and take a look at that. Okay. I would like to make the top line a little bit thinner. So it's a little bit too wide, I think. So if we can go in and make that less bold, I think it's going to help. So let's go ahead and so for you, by shading in around areas, you can make it a little bit thinner, a little bit less prominent, a little bit less impactful, a little bit more graceful. So I think that's paying dividends. That's helping. That's looking good. Everyone sees things slightly different, so it's but if you can capture the basic height and width of the chair, showing that it's off center, you're analyzing, you're describing the structure. It's a good feeling now you can pull that off. Now looking at this, what kind of So more detail. Let me stop right there and just zoom out a little bit. Now I'm pretty happy with that. I think I would, next time I would make the right side a little bit lower. I can fix that right ear a little bit. I think that's going to help. And then you notice the inside light bulb shape. That's too short. It needs to be a little bit taller, and you need to remove some of that. Let me see if I can do that right now. It's, so this area right here is not what I'm happy with. Okay, let's see if we can fix that a little bit. So I'm going to erase that first. And then I'm going to go back in with white pen. So this is higher, and I'm really looking at that little corner space right there. So how can I bring that? Oh, much better. Yeah, that looks a lot better. I think that little curve negative space matches up with the original much better. And I kind of like a little bit of the line showing through, but let's see if we can clean that up. Let's make this a little bit larger. So here's the base, and I'm not concerned about that gray shadow there. If you want to try to put that in, that's fine. What's tedious about this is the shading. So if you have like a margin around this piece a little bit, that's fine. If you have any questions, make sure you email me. Try to answer as fast as I can. I'll be working on your grading for your last assignment after I get off here. If you wanted to try the shadow, I guess it's just a lighter gray, and you would just less pressure, and you would try to draw that curve. Where does that arc? Where does it begin? And where does it end? So that's a little bit too dark. Or lower the opacity. There's my attempt at that shadow. If you double check the negative space in between the shapes and forms, it's corresponding with the original picture. I hope that was helpful. Let me know in your comments. Have a great day, and I'll try to post another tutorial for the other assignment later on also.